Well, everything is a mess. We don't know what the real data is. The government keeps telling us that, oh, yes, everything is absolutely rosy. The economy is doing well. And if it does falter, it will just be a soft landing. Like a recession is just an everyday occurrence and it's just going to be soft. Don't even worry about it. But that's certainly not what the data shows us. We've been looking at data, we've been talking about this. And oh, by the way, if you like my videos, I could use your support. You know, YouTube is really funny about having people subscribe and like buttons. So if you like our videos, please subscribe. It really helps us. You know, I'm talking about helping us. It makes a big difference if we know exactly what the data is. It's very hard to come by. So I've been talking about the data, certainly having trouble with the government officials. So let me go to my very first slide. Let's just talk about what we're going to talk about today. And let's just think about what's really going to happen. Because recession risks are certainly rising. And everything that I see says that employment is failing. And there's less hours worked, there's less jobs worked. Let's just go through the next data here and let's just talk about this. Now, we just got this for July. Remember, a lot of our data is backwards. We have a lag to it. So we just got this, about a week or so ago, and we're talking about the full-time jobs. So even coming up, we've got a job loss for July, a full-time job loss of 670,000 full-time jobs. Now, these are generally pretty good jobs. These are ones that you can count on. You know, you're getting better than 32 hours a week. You can generally maintain your family on these. But according to statistics, if you work 1 hour a month, you are employed. And if you're not looking for work consistently, you're not counted. So this all works really well if you're trying to, make things look better than they are. Because on a new slide, we're looking at the fact that part-time job gains, can you believe this? Part-time job gain over 1 million jobs. You lose 670,000 part-time, but you gain 1 million part-time. How do you do this? So this is where you get multiple job holders because, you have to have 40 or 50 hours worth of work, to feed your family. Let me go to my next slide. And this is what we're talking about, is that the multiple jobs are increasing to over 8 million people are working multiple jobs to get by, over 8 million. And if you look at this graph that comes out of Federal Reserve electronic data system, all this crowing about how the administration has created, millions and millions of jobs, it's because we shut down the economy. Remember, it was just going to be shut down for just 2 weeks. It turned out to be shut down for a lot longer than 2 weeks, and millions of jobs were lost. Well, we're just getting them back. It's taken 3 years, and we're not even back to where we were before pre-COVID, and already we're starting to see trouble in the economy and we have job loss. Now, there's every time the talking heads are talking about the fact, the employment is doing really, really well. Well, is it? Is it really doing really well? If you look at a lot of the statistics we look at, it looks like, yes, there's a lot of jobs. A lot of them are just part-time jobs. Part-time jobs don't normally pay a lot of money. Those are the ones that are paying 10, 12, 15 bucks an hour. They're not the 35 or 40 or $50 an hour jobs. Those are full-time skilled working jobs. And those are going away. We've talked about those in our other videos, that manufacturing in the United States is slowing down radically. And, good jobs in the manufacturing pay very, very well. So here's a graph. This is coming out of the electronic data system of the Federal Reserve. We're not even back to where we were pre-COVID. So there's no such thing as we've made millions and millions of jobs. We've just recovered millions and millions of jobs. And we're not even recovered all the jobs we lost. And look at this. You don't see this very often. Here's one of the big problems where people don't necessarily trust the government's data, is that they come out with a huge number. Bureau of Labor Statistics does a seasonally adjusted figure. Well, how do they arrive at seasonally adjusting? Well, they say, well, we should have had 1 million jobs. So let's seasonally adjust it up to where we get 1 million. They just add the numbers that they think is going to work. And then that's a headline number. And 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 weeks later, they revise it down. And for the last 7 months so far this year, they've revised down each and every month. They revise down the employment. They're not what they say. And 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later, out comes another data, and it's much, much lower. The only time you've ever seen that before is during the great financial crisis, which concerns us. You have to read between the lines to get any kind of real substance to the amount of data that we're looking at. Let me go to my next slide. And here's the August private payroll, non-seasonally adjusted. Non-seasonally adjusted. Look at this. It's the worst since the great financial crisis. So what's actually going on? What's actually going on? We're actually losing jobs, and the government doesn't want to admit to that, and it makes it very, very difficult for us. So here's what we see is that the economy is faltering and employment is starting to fail. Now, remember, employment is a very, very lagging indicator. It's one of the last dominoes to fall before you have recession. And they do that because it took, who wants to lay off your workers? First off, there's a moral and ethical to doing that. And then there's a business side. You have people that are working. You need workers that make whatever it is that you do. And it takes a long time to get a good employee. And if they know how to structure, you certainly don't want to get rid of them because they know what they're doing. So you only get rid of them when you absolutely positively have to. And our employment is failing. That's the last domino to fall, guys. And look at this. So we've been talking about the fact that the GDP. So GDP is a weird thing. So that's gross domestic product. Do you know that every time that the government spends every 1% that we do deficit spending is 1% gain in GDP. Just think about that. Every time, let's just talk about that. So every time the government does deficit spending, so if they do 1% deficit spending, that appears in the GDP as a positive spending number because the government is spending. Last month, the government did deficit spending of 9.6%, and the GDP was under 3%. That means if the government wasn't deficit spending at enormous amounts, the economy would be way negative. Again, so how do you trust what's going on? How do you figure out where we are and what we should do when a lot of this data is just either intentionally misleading or just misleading because it's not real data? Let me go to my next slide here and see if we can make some heads or tails of this. So when we look at this one, this is for the GDP. And so the GDP is looking at this, and we had a GDP and then the gross domestic income. And those two are basically two different things. So the GDP is what the gross domestic product, but the gross domestic income is what people receive. That's what the average worker is earning. In the last 3 quarters, it has been an absolute nightmare. It's been devastating. And we're seeing this go to the point where we only see this during a recession. So the number of recession warnings that we get are just enormous. So this deficit deviation from between gross domestic product and having it translate into income for people earning is at this huge discrepancy. It's huge. It's enormous. It's at record levels. And it's telling us a recession is coming. I heard today that it's going to be a soft landing. Well, hopefully it is. It doesn't appear like it is. I mean, let's go through the rest of this video and we'll take a look and see why I don't think this is happening. So look, U.S. total tax revenues are a reflection of people earning. So, it takes it right out of your paycheck. You have to pay quarterlies. Corporations pay quarterlies. Businesses pay quarterlies. Self-employed pay quarterlies. Workers get it taken immediately out of their payment, and the tax revenues that the government is receiving is dropping. It's coming down. So if it's coming down, and it came down 9.2% last month, just in 1 month, it came down 9.2% in June. Well, this is a problem for us. It's telling us that what the government is telling us probably is not true. I go to my next slide and look, and this is just awful. This is just awful. So let's just look at this. So I'm going to tell you that here tells the whole story. Absolutely the whole story. So we're looking at historic credit card balances. Now, I know if you open up your mailbox, you've got all these credit card applications coming due, because the credit card companies are making 20% plus on interest on their balances. I've heard of some that are getting almost 30%, like 29%. If you were a credit card company, wouldn't you just love to be getting 20 to 30% interest on your money? Holy cow. How wonderful is that? But credit card balances are at his historic high, and savings is at historic low. So what could possibly go wrong? So it's telling us that the consumers are tapped out. They spent all their savings. Remember when you got those direct deposits to our savings account? They just sent the checks right out to you. You got direct stimmy checks, and people were out spending. Oh my gosh, the economy was taking off. We were flooding the economy with money. Companies were getting all kinds of this help from the government for being closed down, and there was so much fraud going on. There was money flowing absolutely everywhere. Well, that's gone. That's over with. That's done. So everyone spent that money. All that stimulus money is gone, and we've had a couple of good years. So 20 and 21 and into 22, those were pretty good years. And now we see that we're shifting from full-time employment to part-time employment, and we're shifting from full-time employment to multiple jobs so people can make their payments. And then we get data like this that says that the savings is depleted. And then we're having trouble with our banks too. And that's time for another video. We won't talk about that today. We're going to talk about what you can do about what we do as investors, because this is a direct threat to our future. So let me go to my next slide. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've been harping on this for a really long time. Governance in a lot of our cities in the United States is very, very poor. We have lots and lots of antagonistic aldermen and mayors and governors that are antagonistic to business. They're antagonistic to people making money. They're making it very, very difficult, and they're overspending. And then they look to those that are working to pay the bills. And I've identified these cities: Chicago, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, San Francisco. San Francisco is a mess. What a mess! If you're in San Francisco, you have to ask yourself why. Why am I in San Francisco? Seattle, Portland. These are places that have very poor governance. You start talking about defunding the police, and then when you find out that that's really not such a good idea, now you're in trouble. And if we as investors are invested in these places, that's our capital, that's our future, that's for our kids, for our family, for our future retirement. So you have to ask yourself, what am I doing here? Am I so invested in this community, into Portland or Seattle? I mean, where the governance is such that they don't feel protected, that this is a good place for me to be putting my investment capital, and I'm going to leave it there. Let me go to my next slide. We've been harping about this. Let me go to my next slide. So let's just look at Chicago. I've been talking about Chicago. We got this for PMI for July. Remember, we lag and we don't get data right away. in July. Chicago is a big manufacturing hub, one of the greatest manufacturing hubs in the United States. Great transportation, great workers, great people live in Chicago. And the PMI is dropping like a rock. It's telling you it's way below zero. It's like something. Let me just take a look at this. It's negative, almost negative 20%. When you go down to zero, you start thinking, oh my gosh, this is really awful. When it starts going to minus 20, this is just terrible. And this is coming out of the market news. So it's the PMI. It's the producer index. So if you've got stuff in Chicago, you got to start thinking, why am I in Chicago? What's Chicago going to look like? It might look like Baltimore. Baltimore is a failed city. Can Chicago and Detroit become completely failed cities? Yes, they can. Can Portland become a failed city? Yeah. San Francisco is well on its way to becoming a failed city. And this is what happens. If you look at my prior videos, we've been talking about the fact that big towers are being sold at 60, 70, 80% discounts. They bought them for $80 million in 2017, and they sold them for $20 million in 2023. Can that happen to you? Absolutely, positively. And it doesn't have to be on these big grand scales, because you saw my last look at. Let's just go back to this. Let's go back to the slide. This is what happens. Prices plummet. Here it is that Baltimore is going to spend billions and billions of dollars to try and renovate these things. They should just be taking them down to the ground and rebuild. These are slums. These are buildings, and they're just, the whole city is crumbling. So why would you, if you're anywhere near these metropolitan areas, what are you doing there? What are you doing there? So I'm going to tell you that I have been talking about ad infinitum here, that Florida, Texas, Arizona is such a much better place. The future is very, very good. Now, I also been talking about the fact that we are probably going to look at some kind of a correction in the marketplace. Could be a pretty vicious correction. We certainly have unsustainable prices of homes. So either two things happen: either wages have to come dramatically higher, or interest rates have to come down to 2 or 3 or 4% again, or, and here's what I think is likely to happen, these unsustainable prices are going to come down. I don't think Phoenix is going to be immune if that happens. We've been talking that Phoenix could easily see a 10 to 30% price adjustment. I think we've got a huge unsustainable bubble. I mean, anyone that's has a house in the last 2 or 3 years and bought, like 3 years ago, they've done extremely well. They've gotten a gift, a gift of $150,000, $250,000, $300,000, $400,000. I mean, I've seen $500,000, $1 million here in Phoenix. So here's what I'm going to suggest to you. Now, I know this sounds like I'm beating my own wagon here and tooting my own horn. I think there's some great markets in the United States. There's some sub-markets, but the great markets are Florida, Texas, and Arizona. That's where people are going. So let me just tell you what's going on here in Phoenix. Now, we are right next to California, and people are leaving California. They're coming here. I mean, we got almost $2 billion in additional tax revenues from Californians. They come over here and, come to work and increase our tax revenues. We did so well in Arizona. Now, listen carefully. So we had a surplus for the state of Arizona. We had such a great surplus. They reduced the income tax, state income tax, from 4.6% to 2.5. 2.1% they took away because we had a surplus. We didn't need the tax revenues. And they implemented it in 2023 instead of 2024, a year earlier, because he had such a great surplus. This is called good governance. And you can come here to Phoenix, Arizona, and you've got a really good future here. Your workers have a good future here. So let me go to my back to my slide. Let me just talk about what's going on. I know this is probably it's going to sound like I'm beating my own bush here, but let me just tell you what's going on. So here's what we have. Now I'm going to tell you, the Wall Street Journal did a documentary on what's going on our 303. They're calling it the miracle 17 miles, and this is just east of California. So this is right outside. You can offload and take your merchandise here to Phoenix, and you can add another 2 states, because now you can service Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, Nevada, and still go back to California for less than what it's going to cost you in California. Way less, like a third less. And we're getting Wolf Sub-Zero just opened a factory here. Nestle's just opened a factory here. Amazon's got a big fulfillment center. Dick's Sporting Goods is here. UPS, Ball, Red Bull. We have so many warehouses, and not little warehouses. We're talking about 1 million square foot warehouses. You cannot get a pad. We have 17 under construction right now. I go to my next slide. I'll tell you what else is going on. This is the 303. This is our truck bypass. We have the Taiwan Semiconductor plant. Now they came out here. They're going to build eight chip plants. That was their idea. They're going to put 8 chip plants out here in North Phoenix. Arizona was selected. About 2 months ago, they decided they were going to quadruple the size of their facility from 8 chip plants to 32 chip plants. Originally thought it was going to be quadrupling it to $40 billion. Now it looks like it's going to be $50 billion. These are high-paid, high-tech jobs, and there's just going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs. They're going to have 32 chip plants at the facility. Intel is opening up more chip plants. And not going to believe this, but 2 ancillary plants that are going to feed into Taiwan Semiconductor are starting to build too. So we've got another 8 plants that aren't with the Taiwan. They're a Taiwan supplier, are also building. So this is going to be a $60 or $70 billion facility, just hiring thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And for decades, this is not just a flash in the pan. This is for 20 or 30 years, maybe 40 years. This is going to be a terrific thing, and it's going to explode all of Phoenix. So about 49% of all development is going on through here. So what a great place for you to invest. What a great place. And you can buy a property there anywhere from $350,000. You can get yourself a good family home, 15, 16, 1,700 square feet to $400,000 and get a little bigger one. I just put one in escrow for $405, 3-car garage, almost 1,800 square feet in a development with 3 community pools and within walking distance of elementary schools. And these are beautiful, beautiful neighborhoods. So if you've got a manufacturing, why wouldn't you come here? Your workers can buy houses. They can live nice. They can educate their kids. What a great place to live. This is also what's going on. So BNSF Railroad just bought another 3,500 acres, and they're going to put in a multimodal facility, and they're going to have rail and trucking. They're going to employ thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And this is starting now, and it's just directly west of the chip plant. It's just going to again employ thousands. And this is not for like a year or two. This is like for decades. This is a big facility. It's going to be $1 billion intermodal plant. So it's a pretty big deal. So again, the chip plants. So here's what I'm going to tell you. If you are in one of these endangered cities, you need to maybe talk to your spouse and find out what your future looks like for you. Is this someplace we want to raise our kids or continue living? Is this where we're going to put our nest egg in? Is this where we're going to is this the hill that we're going to die on? Or do we want to look for greener pastures? I'm sorry, I've been talking about this. I'm talking a little more bluntly. There are better places than these endangered cities that could very well become failed cities. And you can get to Florida, Texas, and I'd love you to come here to Arizona. We are very, very good at what we do. I know a lot of you have lots of capital gains build up, and you're saying, well, I've made $1 million on this facility, and if I sold it, I'm going to have to pay capital gains on it. Well, no. You can do a like kind exchange called an IRC 1031 exchange. There is no tax. It's tax deferred, easy peasy to do. Every broker in the country knows how to do this. We are extremely good at it here in Phoenix. And you just are basically just relocating your properties. And it doesn't have to be a facility. It can be a single family home that you've had $100,000. You say, I don't want to pay tax on $100,000. Well, who wants to do that? It's not good business to pay more tax than you need to do. I mean, we don't want to be illegal about it, but we also want to limit our expenses. And this is one way you can do this. This is an easy way for you to do this. You can do a 1031. They're not terribly, terribly expensive, highly effective. And if you're in one of these endangered cities, I've been calling out Chicago, Minneapolis. I think these are endangered places. St. Louis, Milwaukee. New York City is losing population like crazy. New York, New Jersey, where taxes are so high. You can come here. The houses that I was talking to you about for $400,000. The real estate taxes were under $1,500 a year for that house. Under $1,500. So they're very livable. People have house payments that they can easily afford. So I'm pleading with you that you should talk to your advisors. Find out if this is good for you. We are more than happy to talk to you, your spouse, your advisors, your brokers, and try and set up something that's very, very equitable. If you're a broker out there, we do pay a very, very nice referral fee. We're more than happy to work with just about everybody. We understand everyone needs to make a living. So this is where I'm at. You are welcome to give me a call. I'm here a lot. We have good office hours. I'd love to brainstorm with you. If you pick up the phone and call us, we'll probably, if I'm not there, we'll schedule something so we can talk with you. But these are good ideas. Phoenix is a great place. It has a decades-long trend. You can get into the trend. Yes, I think that as the economy starts to fail, Phoenix is also going to fail, but nowhere near what the rest of the country is, because we're a net in migration. A lot of these cities like Portland, Seattle, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, these are net out migration. People are leaving, and it's leaving a vacuum. And when there's, what's the price of your property when no one wants to buy it? So get on board. If I can help you in any way, I certainly will. My very, very best to you. Bye-bye now.